Guys, with Sergey Pavlich and Tom Aspinall stepping up, agreeing to fight for the UFC Interim Heavyweight Championship, and Alex Pereira taking on Yuri Prochazka, who's returning to throw down for the light heavyweight strap. UFC 295 is going to be amazing. It's coming Saturday from MSG, live on pay-per-view, and my partners at DraftKings are throwing down an incredible deal for all new customers who sign up using promo code Sonnen. New customers can bet just $5 on any of this weekend's fights and receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. You can even use your bonus bets on DraftKings same fight parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together for the same fight, including method of victory and number of rounds. Remember, DraftKings is the only place where you can bet same fight parlays. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. So click on the link below and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. UFC 295 is such a pivotal event. And I got to tell you, I'm a fan. I started in the sport as a fan. I am currently a fan. My time in the sport will end. I'll be a fan. If I'm to be fair with you guys, I think that you felt the same emotion that I did, which is some real ups and then some real downs. Like, just by example, if you were to look at this card, what we've now got is a main event. You return to Yuri Prochazka taking on, making his second walk ever at 205 pounds, Alex Pereira. Or if you're even to look at the co-main event, which is the heavyweights, Aspinall, Pavlich, I think that you felt a disappointment. And there's a great irony in that, right? It really does prove to us what we already know to be true, but it just enforces that thought of how important the matchups are. That MMA within itself, a cage fight within itself, at one time was enough. The spectacle of turning your television on and seeing two basically naked individuals fighting under essentially the most free format rule system inside of a cage. Like, there was a time when that was enough, and we've been spoiled. Right? The time that I'm speaking of where that cage was enough is when there was 6 events a year. 6 events went to 11 events, which went to 22 events, which went to 36 events, which went to 46 events. And I'm just sharing, when we got inundated that, we needed more. And when I talk about how important the matchups are, we really did want Sergey Pavlich involved. Now, whether that was Sergey was going to go in there against Stipe or that was Sergey's going to go in there against Jon Jones, the idea that the backup, who was Sergey, is going to get put in the seemingly new and most recent and relevant era could go in there with yesterday's heroes was very compelling. And we still kept Sergey. We wanted Sergey so bad. We got Sergey. But we lost Jones and we lost Stipe as opponents. When I talk about this card being so important and so pivotal, which it most certainly is, what I'm referring to, the definition that I'm assigning to that phrase, pivotal. When we look back, 2024, at some point in 2024, we will be having massive fights involving these guys. Whether that's Tom, whether that's Sergey, whether that's Alex, whether that's Yuri. And when those massive fights finally land, if we're to trace the history back to how did this fight right now here in 2024 become so big, that's when we're going to look at UFC 295 and realize how important this is. Though they're not the most clamored and the most sought after and the most headline worthy, the ones that you were just salivating over, the repercussions will be. If we take a look at Yuri, it's an interesting thing. Very random thought. But for whatever reason within my mind, whenever I hear about 205 pounds, I go back to this thought. I got a tour of Boston from Steve Thompson. Steve Thompson is just one of the most wonderful men that I've had a pleasure of meeting in my time in the sport, but he's built a life for himself and his family in Chicago. He knows Chicago inside and out. So when he gives me a personal tour, I learned a lot. But the day that I was there, he pulled me past the courthouse. And that courthouse is where the day prior, Rod Blagojevich, how do you say Blagojevich? Rod, the governor, had been sentenced to prison. And one of the reasons that was so interesting is the previous two governors were in the prison where Rod got set. The three consecutive governors from the state of Illinois were all in the same federal prison together. And that really is a very wild concept. And to be right outside the courthouse where that piece of history went down was interesting to me. And it's just something that I remember. I always tie that in when I think about the light heavyweight division right now, because the last three champions all walked away from the belt. So it's really a very fascinating concept. For me, Jon Jones, champion, walks away from the belt. Yuri Prochazka, a dominant champion. I mean, this guy, Prochazka, was on a roll. Walks away from the belt. Jamal Hill, our most current champion, hurts his, I believe, ankle doing a scrimmage basketball game just for fun during fight week. Gives up and walks away from the belt. So we have a real opportunity for everybody else. Like, we've seen times where there's been an asterisk next to a champion. It's very unfair. But Daniel Cormier would be one of those guys where he was champion, but at the time he was champion, a guy who had already beaten him, Jon Jones, was out. Because Jon was out, though Daniel never got that one back, he was the champion. I don't suggest that's fair to Daniel. I'm giving you an example of a champion that had one asterisk. Whoever is the champion now would have three asterisks next to their name. And it's just an interesting concept. And then you have the immersion of Alex Pereira, who has an amateur record. I got asked over the weekend by a massive production company, I'm sure you can figure out who, for end of the year awards, who I currently have as fighter of the year. And the way the question was asked to me was, hey, if Leon is to win, if Bobby Green is to win his next one, lots of things to be considered, but who do you have as fighter of the year? And the question threw me off because of the suggestion that Leon with a win or Bobby Green with a win, that it would be one of those two. The current leader for fight of the year, it's very clear, is Islam Makhachev. No other fighter this year has taken out somebody to that degree. And Islam only got 2 fights this year, but it was the same guy. Volkanovski, the undefeated, the unbeaten, the reigning world champion. While Islam slid past one, he then took on Volkanovski, who had had another title defense and was the reigning, sitting world champion, and it didn't get out of the first 3 minutes. So the clear leader right now is Islam. However, if Alex Pereira wins, and this was the answer that I gave, if Alex Pereira wins, he will, within this calendar year, which is the specific dates of the question, have been the 185-pound champion and the 205-pound champion in the same calendar year, and therefore makes him fighter of the year, per my vote. So I bring that to you because Pereira has an amateur record. Pereira's total MMA record is that of an amateur. I don't believe he has 10 wins. I would have to look. I don't believe that he's had 10 fights. I know that I'm very close. I know he's right there, even if it turns out it's 11 or 12. I know that I'm close, and that's still the record of an amateur, and that's the guy that I currently have positioned to be fighter of the year. And then just how good is Yuri Prochazka? Because he never got his credit. He was not a pay-per-view draw. He has never been a pay-per-view draw. But there's a lot more to his story now, and I think that that's going to turn. I think the fact that you have, I mean, this is as close to a super fight as you get. You get, for the belt, the 205-pound champion who never lost that belt due to losing a match against the 85-pound world champion. And even if that's former, you're now going to combine them in weight classes. It's as close to a super fight as you get. And it's going to be very meaningful where they each go from here. Particularly knowing that Jamal Hill is a pay-per-view draw. He is somebody that people want to see fight. He is the most recent world champion to do this very thing, which is to leave the belt for somebody else to have an opportunity. Knowing that he's down the pipe for the winner of this contest, it's a very pivotal match. And whoever walks away is the interim champion for the heavyweights. It's a massively interesting position. I'm very light on the idea that Stipe and Jon Jones fight. I'm very light on that. They have missed 4 opportunities now in total. And imagining they're going to do it 10 months from now, which will mean that Jon has had 1 fight in 4 years and Stipe has had 1 fight in 3 years at that time. I'm very light on that notion. And which one of them comes off or can't make it happen, and which one does go out there and then has the winner of Pavlich and Tom. It's going to be a big moment. It's going to be a special moment. And there aren't very many scenarios where Aspinall versus Stipe or Sergi versus Stipe works. Or Jones versus Tom or Jones versus Sergi works. There aren't very many moments like that, but there will be when this is done. When all the posters and all the headlines come out and one of those 2 young studs has got the gold belt over their shoulder, the imaging and the marketing and the what's to come and the who is the real champion. The interim champion who can go out there and be busy and defend it right now, or the undisputed champion who can't walk out there and do it right now, right? The belt is to represent who is the best in the world right now. That is specifically what it is supposed to mean. To have an interim champion who is willing and able to go out right now versus, and he's got the lower belt, the undisputed champion has the higher belt, but openly can't go out and defend it right now. I just think you have a very different story. And I think those stories won't work without 295. Which is why I maintain this is the most pivotal event of the year.